Lizzie Mavijas,
Here.
Derek Merrill, Jeanette Torres, Shia Draper, Barry Sherman,
Here.
Carla Castaneda,
Here.
Mike Belvin, Kristen Rich,
Here.
Rafael Mendenarez, Mike Tubman,
Yeah.
John Zimmerman.
Wait, I have a late addition.
Oh, hey, Shia Draper. All right.
All right, so to the, oh, sorry, public announcement.
Please be advised that the notice requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act have been complied with and satisfied, and the annual notice gives sufficient notice of the time, place, and conduct of all public meetings of the zoning board of adjustment of the city of New Brunswick has been filed with the city, sorry, I got lost here. Please be advised that the notice requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act have been complied with and satisfied, and the annual notice which gives sufficient notice of the time, place, and conduct of all public meetings of the zoning board of adjustment of the city of New Brunswick has been filed with the city clerk and placed in an appropriate bulletin board at the lobby of City Hall, 78 Baker Street, New Brunswick, New Jersey, and has been transmitted to the official newspapers of the city of New Brunswick, namely the Home News Tribune and Star Ledger.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's, I'm gonna do first. Put minutes in here first, we're gonna put them on the agenda. That should really administer some time, or basically your transcripts. We have, eligible board members that are present today are, let's see if I can just, everybody who's here. 4, 5, 6, yes, everyone but this.
All right, do a motion.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. Shia Draper,
Yes.
Barry Sherman,
Here.
Carla Castaneda,
Yes.
Kristen Rich,
Yes.
Mike Tubman.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Now, the resolutions. So first we have the 13 Stone Street resolution. Eligible voting members are, again, same as the minutes.
All right, do a motion. Aaron? Second.
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 All right. Okay. DRG Morel. And all these are going to be the same. Actually, wait, in this case, I think, Kristen, no, that was, did you abstain on this one?
I abstain on
You did? Hold on, let me check. Voting sheets. Was that this meeting? I think it might have been,
Meeting?
yeah, it is a couple meetings ago, so I think it's everybody at this one.
Okay.
You had a motion.
Who motion?
So moved.
Barry, first and second.
That's all right. Shia Draper? Yes. Barry Sherman?
Yes.
Carla Castaneda?
Yes.
Kristen Rich?
Yes.
Mike Tubman?
Yes.
John Zimmerman?
Yes.
All right. Same folks.
Which?
For 52 semblance.
52. Okay.
So moved. Second.
Shia Draper?
Yes.
Barry Sherman?
Yes.
Carla Castaneda?
Yes.
Kristen Rich?
Yes.
Mike Tubman?
Yes.
John Zimmerman?
Yes.
I guess.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so, public hearing, Harvey Street Hold LLC, 8/10/16 Harvey Street, lot 30, lots 30.01, 34, and 35, ZB 2025-07. The applicant proposing to make the project site of the three addresses a mixed-use 5-story building with residential units and a retail/office. This application is considered a major site plan. The applicant will be seeking relief for a CND variances. Thomas F. Kelso Esquire. Mr. Kelso, does anyone here on the board have any conflict for this application? All right, seeing none.
Thank you, members of the board. Thomas F. Kelso on behalf of the applicant, Harvey Street Hold LLC. We're pleased to be before you tonight, with what we think is a fairly interesting and unique project for this location. As indicated by the notice that was read, the applicant is seeking preliminary and final site plan and variances approvals for construction of a 5-story mixed-use building containing 6,621 square feet of retail space on the ground level and 36 residential units consisting of 16 one-bedroom, 12 two-bedroom, and 8 three-bedroom units, and a parking facility for 63 parking spaces. As is indicated, the application does seek several D variances, one of which, of course, is a use variance, because the commercial component of this project, and as a mixed-use development, is not a permitted use in the zone, which is the R5A zone, which is the residential single and two families. There's also a D variance for FAR 3.95, whereas a maximum of 0.55 is permitted, and a building height of 56.86 feet, whereas a maximum of 30 feet is permitted. I would indicate in this situation, as you can imagine, all those D variances are significant, it's because it's in the R5A zone. I think with our testimony, we'll provide to you that this location sits immediately adjacent to the French Street corridor, which is zoned for commercial uses, and we believe that this combined use of this building fits neatly within the expectations and the vision of the French Street corridor revitalization is. So we will provide planning testimony to support that. In a similar fashion, there's a front setback of 2 feet, whereas 10 is required. A side yard setback of 3.09 feet, whereas a minimum of 5 feet is required. A combined side yard setback of 7.09 feet, whereas 12 feet is required. Rear yard setback of 3.67 feet, whereas a minimum of 30 feet is required, once again anticipating a single-family or two-family home. Building coverage of 89.25 feet, whereas a maximum of 40 is permitted, and a parking variance permitting 63 parking spaces, whereas a minimum of 123 spaces are required. And just as an overview of that, I would just like to point out, once again, with the bulk setback requirements, it's envisioning the R5A zone. And we believe that this use being appropriate and compatible with the French Street corridor, all of those bulk variances, which really anticipate the R5A zone, are really more appropriate for the zone that this is adjacent to. And I think our testimony will point that out. I've indicated about the parking variance. Numbers can be misleading, and I'll tell you why I say that, and we believe our testimony will bear this out. We follow, because the ordinance requires it, although the law now says that this is only a maximum requirement, and we follow the RSIS standards. I think this board has seen on a number of occasions, and the planning board also, that the RSIS standards were not designed for urban areas. So when we talk about parking requirements for this type of use in this location, the RSIS standards really don't reflect what the real demand is here. So it's interesting to note that also the rezoning that the city did recently for this type of multi-family structure reduced the parking requirement, recognizing, I think, that the RSIS standards really don't apply and aren't appropriate for this location. So technically, we are applying for a variance that sounds high, but the reality is the demand doesn't approach at all with thinking that the planning board and the council had with regard to a new standard, as well as just the practicality of where this is located. I would also point out, though, in order to help the development and support the variance, my client has secured a commitment from the parking authority for 20 additional spaces in the Patterson Street garage, which is within walking distance of this location. And my client believed that's appropriate because it allows him to separate out the commercial users on the first floor, and their parking will be set for the Powder Street garage. And we can limit the parking in the garage to the residents. So again, I want to point that out to you so you can anticipate what the testimony hopefully is going to be provided to support that. Because we think from a vision perspective, all of this is appropriate in terms of what this development is carrying. I would also point out that yes, we're seeking commercial use for retail use on the first floor. But as our testimony will point out to you, it's not simply a retail location. My client's been working with NBT, Brunswick tomorrow, to utilize this space as an incubation location for startup retails, small businesses, and the site is going, the location on the first floor will be designed to accommodate those type of users. My client's been working with MBT on this for a while, and I do have representatives of MBT here who give some new testimony. But I want you to look at that and recognize it's not your everyday retail. It's not fast food. This isn't, a restaurant. This is an incubation space for small startup retailers, and it's ideally situated right next to the French Street corridor, where those type of users, some of which I think are sitting out there, are already retailers in that location. There are several other variances that I think are minor in nature, but I do want to point out for the record, so that they would be contained in any resolution of approval. And that is, we are not providing an off-site street loading zone because of the limitations of the building. However, there is located across the street an existing loading zone. And we were encouraged by the city technical advisory committee and the planning department that loading zone would be appropriate for use for our building because it's a public loading zone across the street. Since this is technically in the R5A zone, there's no ability to do commercial signage. So we're looking for a variance to allow commercial signage. And based upon the recommendation of the planning department, we would look to follow the standards of the C1 neighborhood business district for that type of signage. But we are looking for the variance so that we don't have to come back. And as long as we meet that standard, we don't have to go back and get specific signage approved. And finally, foundation plantings around the building. Sometimes we've argued this is a design waiver, sometimes we call it a variance. I think we've finally decided it's a variance. But because of the site limitation, the amount of the impervious coverage, there is an ability to put landscaping foundation plantings around the building. But I think if you look at the site plan, you can recognize overall that it really is not necessary in this particular location and for this type of use, particularly with the retail on the first floor. So that's generally an overview of the application. I think sometimes it's helpful that I provide an overview of some of what our thinking is and what we hopefully be able to prove to you. And it gives you kind of a framework for you to be able to judge the witnesses and the testimony that they do provide. My expectation is to provide two witnesses from MBT, and my client will give you a little bit of his background and his vision for that site. And then of course, we'll have our engineer, our architect, our traffic consultant, and our planner to hopefully provide support for the variances in the site plan. So that's an overview of the application. Unless anybody has any questions for you,
I got one, just the parking authority, the letter says 15 spaces.
there was an updated letter that, and we'll provide the testimony, but it's down.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right. At this time, I would call Andy Zoom for testimony.
Please state your name, spell your last name for the record.
Andy, Sue,
Spell your last name for the record.
X ray was involved.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Andy, just as an overview, you are the applicant here. You are the principal of the application, the applicant holding company LLC.
Correct. Yes.
And obviously, you're familiar with the application. You've been developing it for a while, correct?
Yes.
And Is there anything that I said beforehand that you could dispute?
No.
No, okay. So what I'd like you to do is to just give the board, just briefly, a little bit of your background, bringing you to this corridor and your vision with respect to the building, both the residential and the commercial. And I know I gave a little bit of a hint about what that is, but I'd like you to kind of fill it.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Todd. And thank you everyone here for your time and everyone in the audience as well. So I'm Andy. My wife and I, Tink, who's in the audience, we've been investors on French Street for 8 years. In that time, we've invested in and we have 3 mixed-use buildings. And throughout that journey, every year we've been really happy and thrilled to see the economic vibrancy of the corridor that's there. Continues to go up every single year. At the same time, we count 6 business owners as our tenants today, and we're inspired by the entrepreneurial spirit that they have, and their ability to see what they become doing anything. And so that's kind of what inspired this project and vision here. So along with these good things, over time, we've also seen 2 enduring pain points. And one is generally a deficit of residential units relative to the demand for those units, particularly for units that are within close walking distance proximity to the retail, which is centered on the French Street corridor. And the second pain point we see in the neighborhood is generally a lack of affordable retail space that's conducive to new business formation. So those 2 pain points are really the reason why I'm here today to present a project, really whose vision is to build on Harvey Street between French and Somerset, that corridor, 36 new residential units, and the community's first small business incubator space. And the goal of the project is, pretty simple in terms of, articulating. It would be to catalyze the next change and step up in the economic vibrancy of the neighborhood. As Tom mentioned, fortunate to be joined by 2 leaders within New Brunswick tomorrow who can speak further about, in detail about the neighborhood dynamics. But in my experience, in 8 years being on French Street, I would think that any one of the 150 business owners in the neighborhood that you speak to, they'll articulate 2 key challenges to their business. One is just how expensive the rent is. Rent is very, rental space, a store front space on French Street is very infrequently available. When it is, it generally starts at a price of $6,000 to $7,000 a month, tens of thousands of dollars more to do the fit out of the space. What that means for business owners, aspiring business owners, existing business owners to start a new enterprise is oftentimes risking their life savings to pursue that entrepreneurial dream. That, of course, presents huge risks and is a huge barrier to business formation, in my opinion. The other thing that I think business owners will say is that their success as an operator is driven primarily on foot traffic and the volume of people that can track into their stores. And that comes and goes. It's difficult to control. So the vision of the small business incubator space is to directly address those 2 challenges by creating a shared space that offers a smaller store format, but at the price, both monthly rent and fit out, that's a fraction of the stock that's available currently on French Street. In addition, we envision a variety of retail products and services so that there's a synergistic dynamic where the different businesses with the different offerings can pull together a larger, more consistent pool of foot traffic that they can all mutually benefit from. So this is a new concept for a neighborhood, but I believe it would be transformative in terms of the number and types of businesses that can start out there and with success proliferate across other areas within the community. Lastly, the residential component brings a body of new community members to the neighborhood, and for the existing businesses on French Street, many of whom are here, that's another pool of new customers and workers to help drive further success. So with that, I thank you for your time and the opportunity to share this vision. Thank you.
Thank you. If the board doesn't have any questions for Andy, at least at this point, I would call Mr. Charles Berger for testimony.
Good evening, board. Glad to be here.
Please state your name, spell your last name for the record.
Charles Bergman, Bergman.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you. So I'm glad to be here this evening at the invitation of Andy and Ting and Tom Kelso. And I'm a homeowner here in New Brunswick and have worked at New Brunswick Tomorrow for almost 12 years now. I believe some of you, I know some of you are familiar with New Brunswick Tomorrow, but briefly for those who aren't, we're a now 50-year-old social impact organization here in the city of New Brunswick that has the mission to push forward the social revitalization of the city and improve quality of life for all those who live here. And for most of our 50-year history, that has taken the shape of getting involved in social services, quality of life issues, sort of those intangible things that affect the lives of New Brunswick residents apart from the physical revitalization that our city has seen over those 50 years. So we have not traditionally concerned ourselves or gotten involved with physical redevelopment projects or questions. So this is the first time in my 12 years at NBT, and as far as I know for years before that the organization, that we are standing before a zoning board testifying on behalf of a specific redevelopment project. So you might ask, why is that the case? Why is this the project that brought us here this evening? And there are a couple reasons that we see this as a unique project that we particularly wanted to support. One is Andy was sharing the vision for this project and how it fits into the French Street corridor. So one of the projects that we've been working on, that I've particularly been working on in my 12 years in Brunswick Tomorrow, is what we call the Esperanza Neighborhood Project, which focuses on the equitable revitalization of the French Street corridor and surrounding area. We've been working with residents and business owners and stakeholders in that neighborhood to make it a more vibrant, livable place for all those who live, work, and do business there. That's taken shape in a lot of different ways, working with the small businesses along the corridor, working with residents around cleanup and safety, all sorts of things. And in all those 11, 12 years, I have had, up until a year or whatever it was ago, I have had no investor, landlord, property owner approach us at New Brunswick Tomorrow to specifically get involved or seek out our opinion or the opinion of community members that we're working with on how what they were doing could fit with a broader community vision. Andy and Ting were the first ones to do that. They were the first ones to ever call up and say, hey, I saw the murals that you're doing around the corridor. Could we have one in our building? And the first ones to say, we're thinking of a development project. How can we make sure that this development project matches with the vision that you all have and that you developed with community businesses there? Andy and Ting did that. So it's in the spirit, I believe that in that spirit that Andy and Ting have developed this project and have been very open to the feedback we've given them. And I think that's been shaped by the feedback of entrepreneurs and business owners and residents in the neighborhood, and have adapted their vision and proposal based on that. When they first came to us, the commercial space idea looked different than it does now. And that's really the second part of what is unique that we believe is we're supporting in this project proposal, is the unique value of that proposed commercial space. As Andy said, it's very true. This is not like anything we have currently in the corridor in the neighborhood, and it's something that is going to make a big difference, and we think fill a need for entrepreneurs and aspiring and emerging entrepreneurs in the neighborhood. So we really believe it's something that is worth us being here this evening, and has been worth us engaging with Andy and Ting, with business owners and residents in the neighborhood, many of whom are here tonight, and who have been overwhelmingly positive in hearing about and responding to this proposal. So I thank you for your time, and you're going to hear more now from my colleague about the particular business needs that we believe this will fulfill. Thank you.
Thank you. you know, a lot of insert things like this when I hear it. When he says that NBT is 50 years old, it just ages me because I was involved in the creation of NBT and the Brunswick Development Corporation back then, you guys know. It just ages me. You know, I just, thank you very much. At this time, I would call Giovanni Belisario testimony.
Good evening, Giovanni.
Yeah, oh, sorry, you were gonna say your name. I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Ma'am.
Go ahead.
Yes, Giovanni Belisario, Belisario. I'm the Associate Director of Economic Development. I'm in Brunswick tomorrow.
That's swear. Do you swear or tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, and I have not been at MBT for 50 years. I want to start there. But yeah, I mean, part of me is going to say I second everything that my boss, Charles, have said, but I want to talk more representing most of those business owners that are sitting in the back. I've been working at MBT for the last 4 years as the Associate Director of Economic Development. And when I first got the job, the first thing I got was all the challenges. The challenges that the business community, not only in Brunswick, but specifically in that corridor, are having right now. The rent, the price of the rent. So you get one business owner that gets in a space that is $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 a month. So for a small business, small restaurant, small flower shop, it's a lot of money for them. So one thing that I see too, when they walk into this place, they will take a rent for $10,000, and then they go in and they have to subdivide it and sublease those spaces, and you have 6, 7, 8 businesses inside one space. So it's, number one, it doesn't look good for the corridor. Number two, it's the privacy and the safety of everybody that goes in, because you have a beauty salon, a barber shop, a florist, and then you have one of those multi-services businesses where they send in like Western Union to the countries. So when I met Andy and I sat with Andy and he brought that project to us, I was like, yes, great. Can we just sit together and look at it more kind of like a mini mall? When you go to the mall and you look at the food court, every single business has its own space. It looks beautiful. You walk in, you can see what business that is, and everybody has an opportunity to work on their businesses in their own spaces. The place where the rent is affordable, that new businesses and entrepreneurs can go in, open their businesses, get all the support that we can help them with, but also grow, that they can grow, that they can be at a place that they can stay there for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then save some money so they can move on and continue and buy that building, get the second location, get the third location. Unfortunately, right now in the corridor, we do not have something like that. We get the great stories, but we also get those that are struggling right now to pay the rent. So I do support something, a project like this, because I know it's going to be not only beautiful for the corridor, it's giving entrepreneurs an opportunity to open a business, and it's also giving the corridor an opportunity to be beautiful. That when you walk in, you know what business is which, and an opportunity for everybody to grow, a place that is safe, a place that you can see that is growing, and that I know is going to make an amazing impact in the community. Like I said before, a lot of those business owners that are in the back, some of them are even some of his tenants, and we're supporting this project, and even me as an economic developer, my job is also to support those entrepreneurs that are coming in, and with education, with financial literacy, and also those connections, with the city of Brunswick. So, yeah, that's my thing.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Now we get to board stuff. This time I will call Mr. Frank Farrell.
Please state your name, clear your last name for the record.
Frank Farrell, F-A-R-R-E-L-L.
You swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I did.
Farrell, you've been here many times.
Yes, I have. An engineer, for the record.
If you could, Frank, give us just a general overview of the engineering and civil engineering components of the project.
I'm going to shuffle these easels around a little bit. So the plan sheet I'm going to be referring to is the same set that was submitted to the board. It hasn't been edited in any way. So I was going to.
What is the revision date?
It is 10/3/2025, October 3, 2025.
site is approximately 15,000 square feet in total area, and it lies one property off of French Street on Harvey Street. It's identified as 8 to 16 Harvey Street, and it is in block 30, lots 3001, 34, and 35. Referring to sheet 2, the site is currently developed with two 2.5-story frame dwellings and one large masonry structure that's identified as a church. There's also a big parking area and some other amenities on the site. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this. There's a big driveway here that leads us into the site there along Harvey Street. And all that's coming down to make way for a much nicer, coherent one further. Actually, I skipped sheet 3, there's the ground level. We'll leave that there for a second. So just to make sure we have the right site in mind here, it's 15,000 square feet in total area, which exceeds the minimum lot size, which again is the R5A zone requirement of 3,500 to 5,000 square feet, depending on it's a single or two family, so we exceed the lot area. The minimum width is 35, whereas 150 is proposed. The lot depth is 100 feet, whereas 100 feet is required. The minimum front yard is 10 feet, whereas 2 is proposed, and you can see that up here in the front. We don't get foundation plantings all around the building, but we do have some plantings along the front of the building. The minimum one-side setback is on the left-hand or south side of the building, which is abutting the adjacent parking lot for the commercial use that's on the corner facing French Street. And we have a wider 5-foot side setback adjacent to the neighboring residential building on the road. So we're giving a little bit more of that buffer to the residential use that we're adjacent to. The total side yard is listed 7.09 feet, whereas 12 feet is required. The minimum rear yard is 3.67 feet here on the back, whereas for the residential zone, 30 feet would be required. Building height is 30 feet, whereas the proposed is actually 56.86. I believe there was an inaccuracy on the plan as submitted, but we've since corrected that as far as the specimen is concerned. The height is 56 feet, 86 inches. I'm sorry, 56.86 feet, whereas 55 is listed on the plan, and 30 feet is the maximum in the zone. Maximum building coverage is 40% allowable, 89.25% proposed. Impervious coverage has a maximum limit of 60%, where we're at 97.9%. The existing, as I pointed out, was 92% impervious to begin with, so there's not that much of an increase, despite the fact that the building is larger. There's not that much of an increase in impervious coverage, although we do have a stormwater management system to account for that change in impervious coverage. The maximum floor area ratio is 3.95 to 1, whereas 0.5 is per layer. That takes us through the bulk requirements. So the site has 2 driveways. There is a curb cut on the left or south side of the property that brings access into a lower level underground parking area, and a second driveway to the right of the main commercial space, which provides access to a first floor ground level parking area. Both of those parking areas are going to be entirely screened from view. There's going to be no ability to see those vehicles from outside. The central portion of the building is a 6,077 square foot commercial space. It's been described by others as a multi-role sort of commercial space. That also leads to the parking calculation, which takes into account the most aggressive parking count you possibly could have had for this space, which is that 1 space per 100 square feet. If it was office, if it was other retail, other uses tend to, in Brunswick, have a 1 to 300 or 1 to 400 square foot requirement, which would have reduced the parking. But since we're not telling you exactly what's in here, we went with the most conservative approach on that parking calculation. So on the right-hand side of the building, there is an entrance lobby that brings you into the residential portion. There's a stairwell and some elevators in there. And then behind that, there is a trash and recycling room that will provide access both through a person-sized door to the side yard and out, and also a large opening for the dumpsters or whatever may be in there to open down the driveway to the front, where they will be picked up by a private hauler. No city trash removal at this location. I think that takes us through the ground floor. There are 8 parking stalls in size, but the ones that are not ADA compliant are actually stacked parking. So there's a car lift, you can park a car, lift it up, park another car underneath, and the ceiling space is provided for that kind of layout. And that's a very similar operation if I refer to the lower level plan, which is sheet 3. You'll see stalls 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and that's why we've labeled them in that manner. So there's 2 cars in each of those spots. In total, there are 36 individual spaces, I'll say, if you don't count the verticality of stacking the cars, which would be then attributed to one of each of the 36 units above. So all of the residential parking that would be sort of a 1 space to 1 unit, it's actually better than that, is provided for in this layout. There's also a number of tandem stalls that are identified also as EV-ready spaces along the middle of this lower level parking area, which, by the way, all the spaces, I believe, are 9 by 18. They're all compliant, last I checked. And also, the EV count is compliant with the requirement based on, again, a much higher parking standard at one per 100 square foot for the potential restaurant. Also, in this lower level, there's another stairwell. There's a kitchen area that may facilitate the use of food service on that first floor. There's a number of storage units and an electrical. To touch again on lighting and landscaping. Lighting, I believe the engineer's report identifies that there is a spillage in lighting on the, I'll say, the rear right-hand side corner. We will rectify that in the plan revision should the board choose to act favorably. We'll make sure that the light is screened and is not spilling over onto the adjacent property. There's also a 6-foot board-on-board fence or similar fence that's going to run the perimeter of the property to help screen that lighting or whatever uses may be, whatever walkways may be there. But lighting is provided in the current. That spillover occurs up in this top right-hand corner. But we are lighting the perimeter areas as well because there's an egress route from the commercial space at the middle or the rear of the building that'll take us out to the side and then through an improved walkway, sidewalk out to the front as well. So there's 2 egress points from this first floor commercial space, one from the front and one from the rear, which brings us over. The landscaping is provided along the front of the building. And in consideration of planning comments I believe that we received, was it yesterday, this morning, Friday? We intend to provide additional planting of street trees along the property's frontage. I believe that we're showing 3 now. There's a desire to show up to 6, and we intend to work with your professionals to make that happen. There's going to be new water, sewer, gas services all over right away. We have no reason to believe that any of those services are inadequate. There's uses here now that use water, sewer, et cetera. Stormwater management, let's cover that real quick. So the building will be fitted with a stormwater management system that is going to convey roof runoff to a number of detention tanks that are located underneath sort of that driveway in the front of the lot. That would be down into that lower level parking. That will be outfitted with a couple of pumps, and when it rains, the pumps will kick on, and at a much lower rate than would have otherwise been coming off the site. And through the use of this system, the post-development flow will be no greater than the pre-development flow for 210, 25, 50, and 100-year storms, as is required by the engineering landscape standards. I believe there's a comment in your board engineer's report to clarify certain elements in this plan, and we certainly intend to do that. These tanks are more easily made to be waterproofs rather than pouring one giant foundation, and there's going to be equalizer pipes between them so they can sort of share the water amongst them, and the lowest of the 3 tanks will have a pump in it. That will daylight out onto the gutter of Harvey Street, just downstream of the southern driveway. And to be clear, this is where all of this runoff would have been going in the existing condition, based on the amount of impervious coverage that was there. Only a very small area along the rear or side of the property in the existing condition would have drained onto the neighbor. We're actually further reducing the amount of stormwater that would run off onto neighboring properties to the west. So in short, the development will not substantially alter the drainage pattern in the area. So I think that we covered the mixed-use aspect of building. Building height at 58.86 feet per square inch permitted, floor area ratio, front setback, combined side yard, rear yard setback, building coverage, impervious coverage, the parking variance. So there are a total of 63 physical spaces. There's also 13, there's a credit for 13 EV spaces provided in the ordinance, and the deficit will be 60 spaces. That's not including the fact that there are 20 spaces available at the New Brunswick Parking Authority in the Patterson Street area. So that number is the absolute highest parking variance that we could possibly calculate for this project. And we certainly wouldn't anticipate the demand for this site being that much parking again. We also have a driveway width of the desired variance. A driveway width of 24 feet, whereas 30 to 36 feet is required. In short, we don't need a wider driveway. It's been our experience with similar projects that the 24-foot wide driveway is adequate, and it doesn't benefit the community or the site to have a wider driveway. It would potentially further limit on-street parking, and wider curb cuts. There's just more area on the street that you can't park. So we're going with the 24-foot wide driveways, which is certainly adequate for passing vehicles in the site.
And for the record, that's a waiver, not a variance.
Yeah, I believe it's in the
Design.
design manuals, right. The on-street loading, so I'm going to gesture at, it's block 29, I believe it's lot 5, which is kind of catty corner across the street on Harvey Street. There's an existing loading zone in that facility for the community in general. It's a public loading zone. And the deliveries for this site are not anticipated to be large, very large vehicles. There's a number of small retail or similar commercial spaces in there, so we're not anticipating large deliveries and whatnot. And then the delivery of regular packages would be handled in the front foyer or the front vestibule for the residential portion. And we're not identifying signage on the plan at the moment, but we're identifying that we will be providing, if we're not favorably, a signage that would meet the C1 neighborhood standard for signage, which would be a variance because we're in the L5A zone where no signage at all is being permitted otherwise.
I have no further questions for Mr. Powell. Any wishes to bring the board? Commissioners have questions for Mr. Powell? Yes.
Can you go back to sheet 3 with the building footprint for the ground floor?
Sheet 3 is actually the lower level, but sheet 4 is the proposed building footprint.
The adjacent site to the north, is that residential?
Yes.
Do you know the distance between the structures there proposed?
The existing building to the north is 3 feet off of its property.
And you're
We are 5
another
feet off of
5
our
feet.
property, so it's 8 feet from the adjacent property to the north. And 5 feet would have been sufficient if we were only going to count one of the 2 side yards, but the narrower of the 2 on the left, we felt it more appropriate in coordinating with your professionals that encroachment happened on the commercial spaces parking lot to the side.
You bias the building to the one side to make more.
Yes, we do. We bias the building toward the commercial space to give a better buffer to the residential use next door.
Wanted to just add some stuff, because I did a quick math over here, and I might be off by a space or two. For everybody's sake, since you brought up you're going with a aggressive parking standard
Right.
to give flexibility for users and uses,
Absolutely.
which actually is a question we should address separately, which uses we're going to, because right now it's looking like just restaurant, are we just going to use like all the uses for the C2B or C2A, which is French Street, but we can get to that. If they had gone with a regular retail standard, for parking, it would have made a difference of 40 required spaces.
It would have been, yeah, about a third of that commercial space would have been unnecessary. But we didn't want to,
Two-thirds.
yeah, we didn't want to limit the build out or the final fit out of
Yeah.
that commercial space as part of the application. So I have it listed on the cover sheet as restaurant, but that's for the purpose of that parking declaration.
And I think if my math is right, if you were to, I'm not saying take out the commercial space, because it seems to have a productive use. I think that the building itself the parking would comply with RSIS if it was just an apartment building.
I believe it would
I think
also,
it's-
I believe the whole application may also comply with the modified R5A conditional use for multifamily. The parking can be even better with that. So there's a couple ways in which we could calculate it that it would be better.
I just wanted to put
Yeah.
but that other question about the broadness of the uses that I didn't mean to think of, but it's probably worth addressing so we know where the parameters are on this. You don't have to do that right now, but maybe if that's what it's on. Now I'm done. Yeah.
So I've only seen the lifters work when there's a valet attendant. How will the lifters work?
You talking about the apartment?
Yeah.
I'd like to have my client answer that. Yeah, that discussion.
So,
Yeah, so I do anticipate to have a valet there.
on both sides or one side? Or it'll
For
service
both.
both sides?
The valet will service all the lifts.
24 hours?
No, so I anticipate 7 a.m. to something like 10, 11 p.m.
So if my car's on top and it's midnight, I can't.
Well, we anticipate for the stacked parking, so the tandem spots, if you treat them as one spot, as well as the stacked parking spots, there's enough of those to essentially for every unit that's in there that's not a one bedroom. So we anticipate the stacked spots, it's going to be used as needed. So for example, if you have a 3-bedroom, and you have 2 cars, that spot will be allocated for that unit.
Assigned spots.
Yes, that's right.
I don't know if this is for you or who, I drove past it, and it's really just like 1 lot, 2 lots off of French Street. So if this was on French Street or in a commercial district, what would change the variance that would be when?
What would be eliminated as variance?
Yeah, I don't know, would height be
Height would be higher, the setback, the FAR would be different, it would be reduced, it may not be eliminated. If you eliminated the commercial use, it would be a permitted use. We didn't do the analysis to say to you, well, if this was in a different zone, this is what it would be. But they'd clearly be reduced if this was over,
like 1 lot over?
one lot over, right? And that's why I mentioned in my opening that it's really an extension of the French Street corridor.
No, I think it, a lot of positives, different, but I was just curious.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for this witness?
What will be the flow of garbage for the commercial space?
This is a rather large trash and recycling room here. And we would anticipate that would handle all of the garbage that would be needed for the building. And that would be taken out as needed by the private haulers. If it needs twice a week pickup, it would be twice a week pickup. If it needs to be somehow more frequently, I imagine a phone call could be made.
It's intended to be all private pickup. And as part of I think the comments that the planning department had, that we're committing to, that's a permanent restriction that always needs to be done.
Question, is there, I don't remember, is there compactors for the trash in there with the room, or is it, that's not anticipated at this time? It doesn't matter, as long as you have to come back to us, that is just more of a.
Yeah,
I believe it'll get covered in the architect's
Okay,
testimony.
the architects in the next meeting will be issues on this.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, seeing none, thank you.
At this time, I call Manuel Perry.
That's okay. Manny Pereiras, P-E-R-E-I-R-A-S, with PAU, Pereiras Architects Ubiquitous.
Do you swear or affirm to the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You're on.
Thank you.
You haven't been before this?
I haven't, so
So, Mr., or you?
Tell us about that.
very brief on my qualifications. I received a Bachelor's of Architecture from NJIT in 2001. I also attended there on full academic scholarship. I also received the architecture prize at the École des Beaux-Arts in France in 2000. I have been licensed in the state of New Jersey for many years, as well as many other states, and CARB certified. I've taught architecture over the years in all different universities, and I hold a number of positions on advisory boards. I've been the vice president for the American Institute of Architects, currently a trustee for them, and I can go on. I see your time.
You're really there.
And I have been before boards. I typically go to at least 1 or 2 boards every week, so I'm happy to be here. I hope to be here again in the future.
Thanks, Mr. If you could, rather than me ask you specific questions, just run us through the architectural components and perhaps answer the questions with regard to garbage.
I'd be very happy to. Frank did a really great job. There's going to be a slight bit of redundancy in my presentation. I have prepared 2 easels tonight. One easel is a new document for you. It's a series of renderings so that we could really understand what this looks like. Should I mark it as sensitive?
Yeah, I think we want to.
For the audience as well? All right, let's see. I'm going to be managing 2 easels, so it's going to be a little bit cumbersome.
Frank's here.
Yeah. Great. So I'll put this one here. Thank you. And I'll be marking for the record the back of this as A1.
Yeah.
A1 with today's date. The 27th. Excellent. And the second easel.
You bring mine.
Yeah, now let me move yours back, if you don't mind. The second easel here is the same documents that were submitted to the board, simply on the easel and in colors to make the presentation a little bit easier for everyone. Starting with our cover sheet, we see that the existing lots are, we actually have 3 lots existing. And 2 of those lots are non-conforming in size. They're only 25 foot wide. So I just wanted to make the point that we're bringing the site into more conformance by merging the lots and having one lot that fits the requirements of the zone. Frank did a great job of going through our variances, so I'm not going to bore you with that, but I am going to reference a little bit of the setbacks that we have. On the ground floor, we have 3'8" on the rear of the property. That's very important because from an egress standpoint, that's going to be a means of egress for a lot of our buildings so that we can wrap around. We have 5 feet, 8 foot total from the adjacent property on the north so that we're standing back from the residential, and we have 3 feet at the south end of the building. If we start with sheet Z02, we see the ground floor. And in the ground floor, we see that we divided the parking into 2 ramps. We did that very strategically. Number 1, it reduces the amount of traffic at these points. So we were able to split that up and also split up a lot of the commercial traffic as well. So if we look at the ramp further to the south, we'll note it's 24 foot wide. That's good enough so that cars can go up and down at the same time comfortably. And that ramp slopes down easily to the lower level. In that lower level, we maintain a 24 foot wide aisle and the parking on each side of these, and each one of those parking spaces are 9 by 18. So these are comfortable parking spaces that meet the ordinance as far as size. We do have waivers, as Frank noted out, in the tandem aspect of them and the lifts that we have. We have some leftover space on the lower level that is shared with mechanical rooms, our sprinkler room, our electric room, our meters, and some storage for the residential tenants on that floor. Going back to that ground floor, we see the second ramp. That second ramp is very convenient because that provides access, easy, comfortable access for the trash and recycling room, so that pickup could be done in a comfortable way that's taken off the street. A truck could come in and back out and load it easily with that trash chute. We have contemplated a trash chute with a compactor. So you'll notice as I go through each of the floors, residents could throw the garbage down the trash chute. It comes down into this room that's an ample size, and it goes into a compactor that then can be handled in a careful way. There's access to this trash chute, both from the parking, from the ramp, and from the side of the building too, so that there's the maintenance man has ample access to get around this. And we have the additional parking on the back that Frank described. Also on this level, we see the residential entrance lobby. In that lobby, it's very simple and modest. It's 25 by almost 14. We have our mailboxes, and we have a package system. In today's world, we all use Amazon. It's become very cumbersome in buildings, so we anticipate that problem and try to solve it here. We have a locker system. Amazon comes, scans the package, types in what the resident is, a locker opens up, they put the package in the locker, and they close it up. It covers the majority of packages that are available. Sometimes when there's larger items, that gets marked in and it gets put to the side. But those larger packages are rare. Most packages fit within this locker system. As you can see, we have 2 elevators on this ground floor, and we have 2 means of egress, 2 stairs, and what we do is we push them to the extremes of the building for safety, so that when you come out, doesn't matter which direction you go, you'll have a good fire stair that's 2-hour fire safety rated, so you can get to the street no matter where you are in the building. And then finally, we see this commercial area, which has been the hot topic tonight, and as you can see, we left it as a big open space. Why? Because it's an incubator, and we're not imposing our design, our elements to them. It's designed to be flexible. And a business varies in today's world tremendously. The size of the scale of the businesses tends to be smaller, it becomes manageable, it becomes affordable, and therefore we create a space that could do that. Now, it's hard to say that we're going to approve something that we don't know exactly what it looks like, so we're providing some ideas of what this could look like. And the idea could be, and by the way, we designed this very flexible. We're going to have bathrooms in there that are common bathrooms shared. We have ducts so that if there is a food service, they have the ability to exhaust well and not create a hazard to the building. And so what we've done is we've designed a few ideas of what this space could potentially look like. And I'd like to begin.
We had to mark this.
Second.
Yes, please.
Yes, sure. And just there's a record for the office. I have a digital file of all these images. Should I provide that to you, sir? All these images are located on that drive. And what I'm going to get to now is the commercial space. And what we did is we created 4 images of how we contemplate the space to be. So we have the first image, which is here, is standing from the entry lobby towards the building, where we foresee retail or service spaces on both sides. The bathrooms here that you see on the left-hand side, and then the back area is for potentially small kiosks for food service, and that's what you start to see there. Here is standing at this point, looking in this direction. We see a seating area so that people could grab and sit their lunch there, and the businesses on the right-hand side where we can have multiple tenants, and the idea is that they could be flexible, wider or smaller as necessary, very similar to a mall food court, but for the average person. And then standing here, looking in this direction, we see the bathroom doors again, we see the front door all the way at the end, we see that sitting area over here to the right, and as you can, so you can walk out. And this is a view basically from here looking in the opposite direction, just so we can understand these spaces. And the idea is that this isn't concrete. This will move, this will be flexible, the sizes will change based on the tenants and how they need it. And now I'd like to turn upstairs. The floors are very typical, and what we did is we color-coded it just to make things a lot easier and visible and we could read it. The first thing you can notice is that our rear yard setback has been increased. So the previous building on the lower level at 3'8" is now 17'6". So we stepped the building back on the floors above that ground level. We're taking advantage of that and creating rear decks, terraces, for the apartments on that level only. Again, the circulation of the building is very simple. Vertical circulation on one end, vertical circulation on the other, and a hallway that connects the two. Simple, clean, no questions, especially if there's an emergency. Walking through now the 1-bedrooms. You see here we have 1 and 2 1-bedroom apartments. The concept of each of these apartments is very similar. You walk in to an open living room, dining room, kitchen space, so it's a very contemporary open floor plan. When you walk in almost all of these spaces, you're immediately granted with the exterior windows, whether you're stepping in this way or stepping in this way, so it feels very light and airy. So these are very welcoming, nice size units. Just as a mention, both of these one bedrooms, one of them is 753 square feet, and the other one is 677 square feet. And we have those two one bedrooms. One bedroom plus den are this peach color, and we have two of those as well. Number 207 is 1,270 square feet. Same concept, you walk into a living room, dining room, kitchen area, you have a bedroom with a window, and then the room in the back, which this is something that we learned after COVID. People need their space, they need their home office space so that they can work and have their Zoom meetings and Teams meetings. So it's very important in today's society. We have a small den. It's 8'8" by 11'9" along the back. That doesn't have a window. And we have the same thing in the other unit, which is the same size, 1,270 square feet. Our two bedrooms are another peachy color. Not there. Here's the two bedroom plus den are the two purple ones that you see here. You open the door, open living room, dining room, kitchen area again, windows in the back, so it's nice and large. The living room area, just as an example, is 16.2 by 17.2. And then you have the two bedrooms with good frontage towards the windows there, and a den in the back. Again, a lesson that we learned after COVID. And this is the other unit that's 2 bedroom plus den. It's 1,286 square feet. Bedrooms are 12 by 13 and 14 by 11.7, and the den 13 by 12. And then finally, we have a proposed 3 bedrooms. How often do you see a project that has diverse housing stock? This is something that towns want. You know, typically we see one or studios. This actually has a very diverse housing stock with 3 bedrooms as well. 3 bedroom number 5 is 1,286 square feet, 3 bedrooms on the side, and the same open floor plan concept. And the opposite end of the building, the same exact thing at 1,267 square feet. So that's a total of 9 units per floor, and we have 4 floors, so 36 units in total that we're proposing. The above floors are the same thing, except they don't have the terrace along the back. Every floor has the access to the refuse area and the trash chute. They have an electrical closet and a janitor's room so that maintenance could actually clean every single floor. So all these things have been anticipated, and that's because we have a developer who actually has taken extreme care to every square inch of this project. I have gone through 3 major revisions, and I don't know how many countless minor revisions. We have met over Zoom, over in person, over and over and over again. He gets feedback from the community, comes back to me, and we digest everything that was discussed and dissected, and we come up with a new idea. He brings it back to the community, he brings it back to the discussion. We have worked on this project endlessly for a long time now, and I'm glad to finally be here to present it to you. Every floor is the same. We did provide the board with every single floor plan, just so that there's no confusion. And then we get to our elevations. And our elevations show us that we have let's get to the roof, just to be clear. We have our elevator machine room shown on the roof behind the elevators, and we have one staircase that goes up to the roof for maintenance so that there's access. There are condensers on the roof for the HVAC system. Those are all well set back from the edge of the building, so they're not visible, and we have a parapet along the front of the building so that those systems are not visible from the street at all, and it doesn't really impact sound because of the height of it. We have one RTU that services, RTU means rooftop unit, which services the hallway, so that we can bring fresh air and cool and heated air to the hallways of the building. And here we see our elevations. There's a nice proportion and scale to this building, and we use, and now I'll reference our rendering as well. This is a 3-dimensional rendering of the facade of the building. And what we've done is we've combined materials and colors to really work with the scale of the building. What we did here is we used repetition and scale to make this not feel like a huge building. It's broken down, it feels comfortable, and it does several things. Number one, we created a pedestrian-friendly building. We have the commercial space open with a lot of glass, open to and inviting, with subtle signage that isn't overwhelming. And that creates a scale and a sense of this band that we have that makes it pedestrian friendly. So you're not looking at this massive structure, it's brought down to the scale of the people and walked out. We have the two garage entrances on each side and the very distinct entry to the building with the building address right on the top. And then the building has a combination of panel system, different colors, metal panels, so that it really creates a beautiful illusion throughout the building. And what we lack in landscaping, we made up with showing little plotting areas by our windows, and we made sure that everywhere we could put landscaping, we did. So if you notice along the retail space on both sides of it, and along the residential entryways, we created 2 feet of landscaping so that you could adorn it with beautiful flowers, which is, I think, the appropriate and correct touch on this site. We do have another rendering, and my team had fun. They made it snow. I guess they were hot when we designed this, and they made it snow to see it have an appearance of what it looks like when this building is in the winter and the snow is here. And then finally another view from the front with snow. Different perspectives of the building, but it shows you that there's some architectural interest to this. The facade has different layers, it has different levels, it has different scales to make it an attractive building for the neighborhood. And I'm glad the applicant has allowed us to spend the money on that design and to create something beautiful there. Just reflecting on the other sides of the building, the other sides are not very visible. The ground floor is going to be made out of block and concrete, and that's simply going to have a stucco finish on that ground floor. There will be a band just separating the two, and then in the back of the building and the sides, we have a combination of siding and stucco. Stucco happens at the stairwells where we have block and concrete going all the way up. Rather than facing that with another material, we finish that with stucco. It's true, and it actually breaks up the facade very nicely. We see also from the profile of the building that we have that terrace on that first floor of residential. That's visible from there. And then the back of the building is all siding. We see the railing for the terraces. We have privacy screens between the apartments, so the 2 apartments aren't looking at each other. And then finally, the other elevation. Note that we wrapped the beautiful facade several feet into the side. So as you're coming up the street, you do see the corner of the building. It doesn't look like a fake facade like we're in Hollywood. It wraps, it feels good, it's a very attractive building, and care and money has been spent to make it that way. And that concludes my testimony.
Yes, I just want to ask you one question. I know that there was a comment from the city planner with regard to the stucco and, the preference for the party board finish or the equipment.
So I spoke to the applicant about this. He's happy to make the board, to accommodate the board and whatever you think. I think the stucco is appropriate where we're using it. It's in the concrete and the black portions of the building only. It's not in areas that are very visible. So I think it's appropriate as stucco. I think it looks good. It's gonna be a lot more durable and it kind of makes sense. But again, the applicant said, man, give them what they want. So you let me know.
So we'll defer to the planning department on that?
We'll wrap it up during resolution compliance and figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. And there may be a combination. I have no further questions from them.
Board member, professional, have any questions?
Yeah, the commercial portion, can you address that a little bit? I mean, it's gonna start out as an open space, and it's so, I know you mentioned kiosks at one point, is the rest gonna be built out permanent walls, or is it, what's the thought?
So the idea right now is to be as flexible as possible. Once the first group of tenants are kind of established, we're hoping that keeps the same pattern, so we're doing as minimum demo and reconstruction as possible. But for the first group of tenants, when they want the space, Some guy might need 300 square feet, another guy might need 500 square feet. So we're gonna design it to cater to them at the first round.
With permanent walls then for the
It
500?
will be permanent
or-
walls, yeah.
or flex- Okay.
Yeah, it will be permanent walls.
So-
We have to comply with code.
Right.
So from a code standpoint, there are fire issues, there are safety issues, there's ADA compliance issues that we need to deal with. So whatever tenant we have, we're gonna prepare construction documents. We're coming before the building department, which, by the way, you guys have an amazing building department, one of the best in the state. We work all over the state. New Brunswick is a great place to work in. And then we'll be reviewing the plans and making sure that it complies with all the codes.
Okay, so start off with big open space and
Yeah.
move as needed.
Correct.
So when it gets very successful and this is thriving in this space down here, where are all the people who are coming to it to spend money parking?
We could have other people speak to this, and especially the traffic consultant and the tenants, but we envision this as a local community-based area. We don't expect people driving into this area.
The dens you have here, I mean, we're factoring your water, your sewer, everything on a number of bedrooms, but you have a den that's as large as a bedroom, and they all have what amounts to closets. I mean, is there anything we can do here to ensure these are being used as dens and not just extra bedrooms?
We can. One of the tactics that we've done in the past is that we omit the door from the dens, and that's something that we could propose to you to not have the door.
I mean, it would also be a restriction in the lease of the individuals so that they would be in violation of the lease if they use it. Obviously, the city would have the restriction on that as well with the approval here. But it is the management would have to be responsible to police that first because of the lease restrictions.
Sure, which is, it's a hard thing to enforce when
It's
it's
a
not
very-
very
it's hard,
units,
but it's not impossible.
Thank you.
If I park in parking A, how do I get from my home to parking A? Do I take the elevator down by parking B and then walk outside?
So every
Do I take
parking
the
space,
stairs?
I'll walk you through.
Okay.
So anywhere you park on the lower level, you have this space that's a gap between cars. It is 6 feet wide so that you can walk and enter the elevator lobby. So you enter that elevator lobby and you have your 2 elevators that take you up to your apartment. If you park on this level, which we think it's going to be mostly used by the commercial tenants and working and building management, that you would walk through this door right here at the entrance lobby. So you walk and you enter the main lobby of the building, and you could head upstairs as well.
Can I walk on the driveway?
Yeah, it's an open driveway, so it's very typical. You would always, in this layout, you're parking your car, you're walking across. Just like if you go to a supermarket, you park your car, you walk across the drive to get to the elevator lobby, so.
Yeah, when you walk, if you walk on the driveway, road. Yeah.
It's 24 feet wide, and it's very close.
Yeah, I do. I thought it was mentioned that the parking on site was going to be solely for tenants.
That is the intention. I know you mentioned the commercial. I mean, it could be used for the commercial, but it's the reason that we did the 20 spaces at the Patterson Street garage, to separate out the residential from the commercial.
Okay, and I'm assuming you would need like a key fob to get into the parking.
Yes.
And if you're in the retail space, what would stop you from getting on the elevator and going to the residence?
Keep up.
Key fob as well. Okay, so no one would be able, only residents. would
Only
be able
residents
use
have access
elevators.
to those floors.
Yes.
I have a question too. Have there been naming considerations of what you would like this building to be called? Or how would that process look like, especially with all the community support that is out here as well? If it were
I leave that for Andy.
Yeah, so New Brunswick tomorrow. I think they have closer touch point to the community, and the neighborhood is called Esperanza. Perhaps that's a source of inspiration, but I would defer to someone else.
Yeah, I would probably add to that. I wouldn't necessarily refer to it as naming the building, but naming the signage on the commercial space may do exactly what Andy said. Refer to the neighborhood, the Esperanza experience, something that perhaps MBT works with them to say, this is the message that you can send through the signage. But I would think it'd be the signage of the commercial space, not the naming of the building. Maybe we get a big heavyweight to name the building for money. Always up for that.
Seeing no other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. This time I will call Mr. Matt Zephyr for testimony.
Please state your name, spell your last name for the record.
Matthew Seckler, it's S-E-C-K-L-E-R.
You swear affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Secretary, you've been before this board?
Yes, I have. My license is still valid, and I'm a licensed engineer and specialize in traffic engineering.
All right, Matt, then, if you could, please walk us through your analysis with respect to the traffic and circulation components of the project as well as the parking.
Absolutely. And again, we've prepared a traffic and parking assessment report. It was dated October 9th, 2025. I'll briefly go through the methodology and conclusions we reached. First thing we do as part of this project is we estimate the amount of traffic that we generate like a site like this. For this type of application, we use a couple of different sources. One is the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual. This is the definitive source that engineers like myself use to calculate traffic generation. Now, luckily, in more recent years, the IT has put out a little more location-specific information, meaning that they do classify certain developments as in mixed-use areas, near rail, as different types of trip generation than if you were to build this somewhere in Warren County somewhere. Obviously, there are different traffic characteristics. So utilizing the ITE, we would project that a site like this would generate anywhere between 7 to 10 vehicle trips in the busiest hour. And again, you're talking about the primary peak hour trips being the residential trips. And one of the things that I believe that would support this type, that IT data actually is supported, is based on the census data we have for the census tract. The census shows that this census tract, about 60% of residents commute by means other than driving their own car. So 60% of the people take the bus, they bike, they walk to where their place of work is. And again, I think this site is very well suited for that, whether you're a medical worker, retail worker, academic, government, all that can be basically walk to, bike to from this site that we're proposing here. So again, when I look at that 7 to 10 trips, 36 unit type of calculation, it seems like it makes sense. The IT numbers kind of do bear out. In fact, they may be a little high again, just because of the unique nature of, if you're working in New Brunswick, you probably could walk, and you could also basically a little less than half a mile get to the train station, various bus lines if you're working elsewhere in the state. So again, the 7 to 10 number the IT uses per hour in the busiest hours, probably a little high, but again, at least passes the smell test as a traffic engineer. Second thing we looked at with this application was the parking. It's obviously a big issue here when you look at the pure numbers. I think you've kind of heard in the various experts and counsel before me, we're really dealing with two numbers that kind of inflate that requirement. One is the RSIS, and that's the residential parking numbers we're dealing with. The other one is the fact that we went with the conservative calculation for the retail, basically assuming it acts as if it's like a fast food restaurant. If it's different types of uses, different types of restaurants, that number would come down. But again, we're dealing with two of these high numbers, but even with that, I think we're pretty well justified with the parking that we have. The RSIS, that was based on statewide census data back in the 1980s. Basically, how many people own cars in the 1980s throughout the state of New Jersey. Obviously, 1980, Somerset County functions very different than 2020 New Brunswick. So when you look at the RSIS numbers, we'd be expected to need 70 parking spaces for the residential portion of this development. Now, again, looking at the census and the census of today for New Brunswick, in this area here, renters, 43% of renters within the census tract do not own any cars. 37% have one car accessible and 20% have two cars accessible. So I do that type of calculation, I come out with needing 27 parking spaces for this type of development, if it kind of matches what this area of New Brunswick sees with their rental population. The IT, again, a source of traffic data collection, they would project a need for parking in this type of area between 0.57 and 0.83 spaces per unit. I'll do the math between 21 and 30 spaces, the IT says. So I have industry standard says 21 to 30 spaces, census data says 27 spaces, the RSI says 70 spaces. Clearly the outlier here is that New Jersey, overall number. When you look at the development that we have here, we're providing, again, 61 spaces ourselves, just interior to the parking lot for the residential uses here. And I actually think it's well designed because we're not necessarily creating excess parking. We're being efficient, and a lot of those spaces are either tandem spaces or stack spaces. So if someone needs 2 cars, they move into the unit, they're able to have those 2 cars either above one another or front to back. If you only have 1 car, you don't have to deal with the stacker, you don't have to deal with the tandem space, but we've done an efficient design. We're not over-designing the parking, we're not basically paving paradise here, we're really fitting everything within the footprint of the building and have the appropriate amount of spaces. The other aspect is the retail, and again, we heard that the retail portion, especially the workers in the retail portion, those tenants, we do have the agreement to park in the Patterson Street garage, so again, that helps account for that parking. The other aspect is kind of understanding this is a connection to French Street here. So again, that aspect is there is parking, commercial parking, just like for all the other tenants along French Street, whether it's a retail service, a retail component, a restaurant component, all of them kind of have their parking on the street there. Same thing if you go back to Somerset or even Harvey Street, if you can find the space, it's there, but that's the type of parking we're expecting for people coming to the area. And again, the key aspect is here, is this is supposed to be a neighborhood business. Just like this, the people that are visiting the retail components on French Street, a lot of that is local traffic. Whether it is people that are working at the hospital walking there, whether it's people that live in the area walking there, work in the area walking there, this is intended to be kind of servicing the walkers or the neighborhood itself. And that's really aligned with that 300, 500 kind of incubator space that we have in this building. It's not intended to be someone's grabbing someone from Piscataway to drive here just this location. It's really intended to have the local business, the local residents be able to appreciate this business. So again, from a traffic and parking perspective, we get very low levels of trip generation. We do have bike parking that exceeds the requirements that kind of account for the fact that people in this building, they want to bike and walk. And from a parking perspective, we believe that we do meet, I would say, the realistic parking demands when I look at the census data and the IT data versus that kind of statewide New Jersey data for this site.
I just have 2 things to ask about. So we are providing 20 committed spaces for the parking authority in the Patterson Street garage, but that is a public garage.
Correct, yes.
So there is parking available in the public garage. If someone wishes to come to the site and drive here, they can park in the garage.
Correct, just as if, elsewhere in New Brunswick, if you want to go to a restaurant, you could park in a garage, pay your, whatever per hour at the time, and come to one of these locations if that's, your desire.
And the other question, because you talked about the analysis of the parking requirement, and I'm understanding that the parking requirement for this similar type of use was simply recently changed to lower the standard for parking. How does that fit into your analysis? It probably is crossing the same thing.
Yeah, it's very similar. I imagine the standard has changed in the city for this type of use because they recognize using that statewide number doesn't make sense. You look at the census data, you look at what the industry sees in terms of kind of mixed-use parking areas and more urban environments, and it seems like the city is moving in that direction. You obviously hear from the planner, because again, I think when you're looking at some of the second prong of the variance that we're seeking, the justification can be there because the city's recognizing that building urban infill development at New Jersey statewide standards probably does not make sense from a planning perspective.
I have no further questions from that.
Just one question, probably not for you, probably ask the architect, but you got me thinking, is there space for bikes in the garage?
Yes, there are parking spaces or bike spaces. We'll go over to it. It's at the ground level. Basically, there's parking all on the back. We have 21 bike spaces. I believe we're required to have 14, so we've gotten 50%.
Great, thanks.
I think that broke it. Really broken down.
This time I'll call my final witness, is Allison Hoffman.
Please state your name, spell your last name for the record.
Allison Hoffman, C-O-F-F-I-N.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. I'm a licensed professional planner, still licensed.
Allison, if you could give us an overview of your analysis of the various variances that we're requesting. Obviously, the standards for the D variances versus the C variances, and the other variances that we've all mentioned. And if you could, hopefully provide your analysis and support for those variances.
Yes, unfortunately, unlike the architect, I'm going to have to bore you by talking about the variances. The applicant tonight is asking the board's permission to redevelop this site with a 5-story mixed-use structure that contains parking, that commercial, small business incubator space, and apartments. We are located in the R5A zone, which is a residential zoning district. So this proposed mixed-use building is not a permitted use in the zone, therefore a D1 variance is being requested. And because the zone is designed to control 1- and 2-family residences primarily, there's some other variance relief that falls from requesting that use variance, and that's a D4 variance for FAR, a D6 variance for height. We've got front yard setback, side yard setback, combined side yard setback, and the rear yard setback, building and impervious coverages, the parking variance, the loading zone, which is required if we use the one on the street across the street, commercial signage, where the applicant's proposing signage consistent with the C1 zone, and it's not permitted in the R5A district, and the foundation plantings. It's my opinion that special reasons do exist for the granting of the requested use variance and the other bulk variances that fall from it, and that the site is particularly suited to the proposed uses, and there is no significant detriment to the zone plan or the surrounding properties that would result from the granting of these variances. So looking first at the big variance in the room, the D1, it's my opinion that this site is particularly suited to the proposed use, and that in so being, it advances the special reasons concept for granting a D1 use variance. This site is oversized for the zone. The site was previously developed with a mix of residential and non-residential uses. The site is located near the French Street corridor, which is a vibrant commercial corridor. This is a walkable area where residential development converges with retail and commercial services. The site can accommodate the proposed use as well and is located in proximity to 2 city parking garages. The proposed development advances the purposes of the municipal land use law. Purpose A, which is to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in the state in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, and general welfare. Purpose D, to ensure the establishment of appropriate population densities and concentrations that will contribute to the well-being of persons, neighborhoods, communities, and regions, and preservation of the environment. Purpose G, to provide sufficient space in an appropriate location for a variety of uses, including residential and commercial uses, according to their respective environmental requirements in order to meet the needs of all New Jersey citizens. And purpose I, to promote a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design and arrangement. Now that height and FAR variances, they're both D variances, but they're, in my opinion, subsumed within that D1 use variance and are appropriate for the use as it's proposed. The height and FAR limits in the R5A zone are intended to control single and 2-family dwellings. However, both the height and the FAR here are necessary to accommodate the proposed mix of uses, which is vastly different than a freestanding single or 2-family dwelling. And should the board agree that the site is well suited to the use, it follows logically that the height and FAR necessary to support that use fall from the D1 use variance. The site can accommodate the height and FAR proposed, since both lead to an increase in floor area. The primary impact is parking, which the applicant has managed through the garage parking on site and the agreement with the parking authority for the use of spaces at the Patterson Street garage. And that also relates to the bulk variances which the applicant's proposing, but the biggest one of which, in my opinion, is that parking variance. but the parking supply that the applicant is proposing is appropriate for the mix of uses as they're proposed on the site. Looking first at the commercial floor area's parking requirement that we used to calculate the parking need is the strictest possible standard of 1 space to 100 square feet, which assumes that all of the spaces in this little market will have restaurant tenants. More likely, it will be a mix of restaurant, retail, and service uses. Retail has a requirement of 1 per 250 square feet. Office has a requirement of 1 per 600 square feet. So the requirement that we're proposing is the most conservative demand. And if any tenant is not a restaurant, the actual demand will be lower. And then, as the board may have heard from previous witnesses, when we look at residential use, it is calculated using the RSIS standard, which would bring us to 70 spaces for the residential alone. However, the city recently adopted an ordinance which created a conditional use standard for multifamily residential dwellings in the R5A zone. And under those conditional use standards is a requirement of 1 space per unit. While this proposal does not fall under that conditional use, as it's a mix of uses, the new ordinance indicates that there are conditions in the city where you would find a lesser parking quantity appropriate for multifamily dwellings. With this standard, the proposal would only need 36 spaces, not 70, for the residential portion of the use. And the experience of this developer in this area of the city has been that tenants are less likely to need parking for cars and more likely to rely on bicycles or foot traffic for their transportation, which indicates that a lesser amount of parking, as included in the conditional use standards that the city just adopted, is appropriate for this development. So the applicant is requesting a variance for 60 parking spaces, but they mitigated it in part with that agreement for 20 spaces, which brings the effective deficit down to 40. And if the residential parking were calculated at 1 space per unit, the deficit would be further reduced by another 34 spaces, which would be a total deficit of only 6 spaces, which would only be necessary if the entirety of the commercial space were restaurant. But in this walkable area of the city, where tenants and customers are likely to be on foot or bike, and the proposed uses are intended to serve the local community, the proposed parking is adequate to serve the development. Looking at the other bulk variances, as with the FAR and height, the setback and coverage relief is subsumed within that D1 variance. The bulk standards of the R5A zone, again, were not intended to manage this type of use or structure, and the setbacks and coverages proposed are appropriate for the use. The site functions well despite the relief being requested. There's no significant detriment that would result from the proposed development in total, despite the need for variances. The proposed development will fit well within the fabric of the community, where there is a need for both housing and spaces for small businesses to start and grow. The building is designed to be aesthetically pleasing and can provide most of the parking that the site will need to function, with the overflow being provided with the Patterson parking garage. And the variance requested would not impair the intended purpose of your master plan and development ordinance. The proposal helps advance the visions outlined in the 2025 master plan, particularly with regard to strengthening and revitalizing a residential neighborhood, providing new employment opportunities, replacing an underutilized property with a mixed-use development, meeting the needs of the city residents with regard to housing, recognizing the city's ethnic diversity and multicultural heritage as a source of pride and valuable resource, improving the quality of life of the city residents. It also advances some of the 2025 master plan's goals, specifically maintaining the character of existing residential neighborhoods where appropriate, while also recognizing the changing circumstances of certain areas within the city, expanding housing supply for different segments of the housing market, continuing to encourage mixed-use development in appropriate areas of the city, continuing to encourage walkable neighborhoods by permitting appropriate mixes of residential and commercial uses in neighborhoods, encouraging various types and intensities of commercial development in appropriate areas of the city, and promoting appropriate infill development and redevelopment of vacant, underutilized, or derelict properties. And lastly, this proposal advances specific purposes within your zoning code that are to promote the creation of service, business, and professional-oriented commercial environment, to encourage the tendency of commercial development to cluster to the mutual advantage of both customers and merchants, and thus promote and establish prosperity and welfare, and to promote the creation of pedestrian-oriented neighborhood commercial environment which encourages maximum pedestrian activity. So, while this application does require DNC variances, they're necessary to allow for this development. It does substantially advance the goals and purposes of your master plan.
Thank you, Allison. I have no further questions for Allison.
Member of the board, questions? Seeing none? I'm sorry, Dan.
Is this the opportune time to like really pin down what uses we're gonna go with here?
Sure.
So what,
I really, I'm sorry.
I think we have like 5 minutes. We did not anticipate this question, so I would like to consult with the applicant.
Well, I don't know. I think you're moving on and asking perhaps the applicant to answer that.
whoever needs to put it on the record, because I don't want problems later when somebody comes in for a zoning permit to occupy the space, and it's like, ah, well, you're not a restaurant, you can't come in here.
Yeah.
If I could recommend, we could just cover all the uses that are allowed on French Street, the C2A
Yes.
districts. I would like to just cover it that
I
way,
think
if
that's-
you're all in agreement on that
Yeah,
side.
That's the way to do it. Yes.
I think that's the easiest, but I just wanted to clarify that that's what the
Yeah,
division.
we need to have something to be able to, the building to rely on.
All right.
We're good there. That completes our presentation.
Okay.
I think the one thing we forgot to ask about was if they have permanent parking and if they were gonna wait.
Don't know that question, answer that question first.
Thank you.
Permanent parking is.
Oh, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Only parking, so there's 60 spaces, 40 spaces, so are 40 spaces gonna be pilot?
So because the pilot doesn't account for any commercial in the R5A, there is no payment whatsoever for this application.
Okay, and then, so the 20 spots with the parking authority, is that a firm agreement, or it's an offer that?
No, it's a firm agreement, they commit those 20 spaces. It's not you don't do an overall lease, what it
Yeah.
does, we now can have a commercial tenant say, you have the availability for X number of spaces, and they then do the arrangement and they pay for it.
Great, thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to open this up to the public now. Any member of the public wishes to make a comment on this application, please come forward. You have 5 minutes per person. Mr. Prattville, come on up.
Can you please say your name, spell your last
Charlie
name?
Prattville, K-R-A-T-O-V-I-L.
Do you swear from the double truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
You're on.
Just a couple of questions. The parking at Patterson Street was, and forgive me, I can't wait if this was said, Plum Street, was that considered? Or does the parking authority not have enough spaces there to offer 20 spaces at Plum Street? Would that be preferable?
I can't answer that for you, but if the applicant might want to answer it, please, you have no obligation.
Anybody answer it?
Yeah, I can address that. Yeah, so I talked to Mitch Karen about that. Plum Street is a little bit closer, but Patterson Street, I believe, if you look at Google Maps, it's 5-minute distance walk. Plum Street's maybe 4. But right now, I believe Plum Street parking is utilized mostly for the cancer center that's there. So it's Mitch Karen, who heads the parking authority, is paying that Patterson Street for moment is more appropriate.
Parking authority's preference. And just, I know you're on the parking authority board, Mr. Chair. Who keeps track of, how many spaces have been committed to each individual project? Is that something that?
I imagine it would be the enforcement. I imagine it would be the enforcement division that's in charge of keeping track of that. I'm not 100% sure, Mr. Credible, so do you want to, I can get back to you on that later.
Okay, yeah, I'd just be curious, because I know these things are pretty routine, that they submit a letter, and then often it's not thought about later on. But yeah, I appreciate it if you could follow up. Thank you, that's all. Best wishes.
Any other member of the public like to speak on behalf of this application? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public portion. Any final board discussions, comments at all? This is a good application for the site. It's something that's needed in the area, so board members are
Agreed.
so-
I thoroughly agree. Looks like a great
Okay, great.
addition to the neighborhood.
Right, excellent, okay, thanks. Dan, you want to read some
Sure.
conditions?
So should the board act favorably, the following conditions shall apply. Compliance with the terms of French and Guerrero Associates Engineering Report dated October 16, 2025. Submission of all necessary easements and or cross access agreements for review and approval by the board attorney and city engineer prior to filing the same. Payment of a site performance bond in an amount to be reviewed and approved by the city engineer. Submission of a site inspection escrow deposit for the engineering inspection fees in an amount calculated pursuant to Title 16.24.160. Payment of all water and sewer connection fees pursuant to Titles 13.04 and 13.08. Issuance of a road opening permit from the city engineer if required. Compliance with the terms of the city planning report dated October 25th, 2025. Planning review escrow funding for all anticipated post-approval reviews. Payment of all outstanding taxes and water or sewer fees. Middlesex County Planning Board approval of the waiver. DNR Canal Commission approval of the waiver. Freehold Soil Conservation District approval of the waiver. Submit engineering site plan to comply with any changes required by the planning or engineering memos or plan amendments after the hearing. Submit architectural plans to comply with any changes required by the planning or engineering memos or plan amendments after the hearing. Execution of a Title 39 parking enforcement agreement. Issue for waiver of permit parking. All utilities and other site improvements to be maintained by the applicant at the show expense. All on-site utilities to be constructed underground. All temporary encroachments into the public right-of-way shall require city council approval. All construction staging shall be done on-site unless an encroachment allowing into the public right-of-way is approved by city council. Streets shall be kept clean of sediment and debris. The applicant shall cause the streets to be cleaned if they're directed to do so by the Director of Public Works. Tracking pads shall be installed at all construction exits. Replacement of damaged streets, curbs, and sidewalks as per the direction of the city engineer. Schedule a pre-construction meeting with the city engineering department. For variances, we have a D1 use variance. We have a D4 FAR, D6 height. I have a front yard setback. I think I saw that there actually isn't a single side yard setback, because there is 5 feet on one side.
The narrower of the two single side yards is 3.09, which is less than 5.
So that's one of the controls? All right, that's.
Well, that was my interpretation.
All right. Anyway, so then you do have a single side yard setback, combined side yard setback, rear yard setback, building coverage, impervious coverage, parking. And I have flagged here for landscaping, waiver for landscape lighting requirement. I think I may have missed a couple, but is there anything else that I missed?
Driveway width.
Driveway width, design waiver for driveway width?
Yeah.
Oh, you're right, loading
And the
zone.
loads.
That's one of the items. Loading zone variance. All right.
And the signs, how
Oh.
do you want to leave the signs?
Commercial signage consistent with the C1 neighborhood business zone.
So you don't have to come back.
Right. For C1. All right.
Okay. Very good. Any other motion to approve?
Second.
Oh, so we won't-
Barry.
Betsy Mamikas,
Yes.
Shia Draper,
Yes.
Barry Sherman.
Yes.
Carly Castaneda,
Yes.
Kristen Rich,
Yes.
Mike Tubman,
Yes.
John Zimmerman.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, members of the board. We appreciate it.
Welcome.